In this fantastic piece of Warhammer themed art, we can see rather a lot of Space Marines. This piece is painted by Dave Gallagher, one of the best Warhammer 40,000 artists ever, and I really miss his work these days. I think David captured the setting and mood perfectly in his work. Seriously, go look it up, it's amazing. Although there are a lot of Space Marines in this painting, they are from all sorts of different chapters. Usually paintings depict just the one. I wonder what the reason for this is. What's actually happening here? I can see Dark Angels, Ultramarines, Space Wolves and Blood Angels. Can you spot any others? Aside from a mixture of Space Marine chapters, there's also a mixture of Space Marine types. I'm not sure if type is the correct word, but we have both fully fledged Marines and also Space Marine Scouts. Maybe they're on some sort of joint chapter scout training exercise. Over the years, Space Marine Scout aesthetics have changed a lot. The original Scouts looked like this. I think the most notable visual aspect was those medieval style puffy sleeves. They probably have a proper name that I'm unaware of. I actually think these Scouts look a lot better than the more boring, less visually interesting Scouts they became later and we have today. But I'm intrigued as to what look you guys prefer. Let us all know in the comments below. Now, once upon a time, I heard an interesting rumour, and that was that a lot of the characters' faces in these old pieces of art were actually based off actual Games Workshop staff members. I'm not sure if they drew them from memory or if the staff actually modelled for them. I would love to know how the logistics of that worked.
Just stand there please, Robin. I need a gurning angry look for my Space Marine captain.
I suppose it's possible this piece of art portrays something from an old campaign in the lore. The early days of one of the Armageddon Wars perhaps. I can't think of anything lore related that brought all these chapters together like this, but I bet one of you guys know. My name's Marcel and this is Snakeworks. Now, I would love to get my hands on some of those old style Space Marine Scouts, but sadly they are quite hard to come by. They're very expensive on eBay. This next fantastic piece of art depicts 3 interesting gentlemen. Sadly, I'm unaware of who the artist is for this piece, so if any of you guys know, then please let us all know in the comments below. So this trio are either laughing or dying. Both are typical reactions to one of my jokes. Some people think they're wonderful and laugh. Others keel over and die. I guess humour is subjective, or they're just miserable. The trio have an interesting and strange appearance. They almost look like some sort of 80s punk band, Adam and the Ants or the Sex Pistols or something. Although I think the Sex Pistols might have been around more in the 70s, but my punk date knowledge isn't the best. I bet one of you guys know. The guy with the awesome crew cut on the right has a wonderful tattoo on his cheek. It looks a bit like a sunflower or a saw blade. Very similar to the tattoos the Carcharodons sometimes have. I myself have no tattoos, although Mrs. Snakeworks does have a couple, the little tramp. Do you guys have any tattoos? If so, let us all know about them. Now, Mel Gibson there on the left has a wonderful pair of earrings on, a pair that looks suspiciously like my ex-girlfriend's when I was around 19. These ones, however, look a bit different. They appear to be made out of those curly lollipops you sometimes get that came in bright colours. There's 2 types, the impossible to eat hard lollies and the considerably better softer ones, which are actually edible. I haven't had one of those in a while to be honest, and I'd love to sample one again, but I feel the sugar might keep me up all night. The chap in the middle of the picture, standing behind the others, looks rather funky. He looks a bit like a cross between Egon Spengler from the old Ghostbusters TV show and that robot guy from Star Wars with the dial on his chest. He sometimes twiddles it to fiddle with his voice. I think he was the leader of the Techno Union or something. I've forgotten his name and I don't even know if I knew it in the first place. It was a while ago that I saw that Star Wars movie. His mouth or mouth contraption also looks a bit like a mounted coffee cup holder. Maybe he loves his Starbucks. Well, at least it's not Costa. Costa is awful, and we refer to it as Costa-Lot coffee around these parts. But both are overpriced though, way overpriced. Oopsie daisy, it looks like someone has suddenly remembered they forgot to pick the kids up from school again. Here we can see another picture of yet another trio of people standing about. It would appear there was a lot of loitering in the early days of 40k. Again, I'm sadly unaware of who the artist is for this piece, so if you know, please let us all know. Our unhappy person on the left of the picture has lovely long hair, like Legolas or Limahl. What's with long-haired people's names starting with L? Anyway, they're also sporting the world's smallest Mark VI Space Marine shoulder pad. Either that, or they're giants. The chap in our face, on the right-hand side of the picture, has a helmet that reminds me of something Imperial, again from the Star Wars movie. A stormtrooper or TIE fighter pilot perhaps. It's very familiar looking. It's not surprising, as Star Wars was probably a huge influence on early 40k artwork. The logo on the stormtrooper's head looks familiar to me. It looks like some sort of lightning bolt in a circular field. Isn't that a logo from Super Metroid on the SNES or something? Does it have something to do with Screw Attack? Wasn't that the Angry Video Nerd's old video distributor or something? I swear I've seen it before. The Stormtrooper also has an interesting reflection in his visor. I'm not sure if you guys can make it out, but it looks like a woman showering or washing her hair. Maybe that's the real reason the guy on the left is covering his eyes. The Stormtrooper, however, is not averting his gaze. The dirty pervert. Maybe it's Darth Vader getting dressed. Now if you fancy discussing just what is going on in this picture, then feel free to come along and join us on our friendly Discord server, which is not behind a paywall. There's a link in the description below and one up here somewhere. We look forward to chatting to you there. Now when it comes to the Marvel movies, or the MCU as people like to call it, many people like to rave on about Endgame being the best, and I have to hard disagree with that and say the previous movie, Infinity War, was a lot better. I felt it was more interesting. Endgame I found a little meandering and dull, to be honest. I do apologise if that offends some of you Endgame fans. Anyway, back to the Marine. So what we have here is another Space Marine themed piece of art, and this one is by one of my favourite Warhammer 40,000 artists, Stephen Tappin. So as per usual with these old Space Marines in early artwork, we're looking at a Mark VI Corvus Armoured Marine, hailing from the Crimson Fists chapter, the original poster boy chapter, and they should have really kept that title. The Crimson Fists are far more interesting than the filthy Ultramarines that we're bombarded with today. Yuck. However, I also have to admit to being a fan of the Ultramarines as a youngster, so I can see kinda why they did it. This particular Space Marine is based on the Communications Marine with the big bulbous head. He had a name in the Oldhammer days, and that name was Orinoco. Brother Orinoco. I think the name was taken from the Wombles TV show. There was a cousin or uncle Orinoco in that. This is one of the reasons why some people also call them Womble Marines, but not many. It's mostly the old school crowd. Mostly. The Space Marine is surrounded in some form of lightning. I don't know if he's generating it or just standing about in it. An argument could be made for both. I don't know why, but the lightning reminds me of an old Aliens comic cover where there are some aliens standing about in the rain with some numbers on their heads. That comic scared me as a child, and I need to go back and look it up.
Don't look at it. Shut your eyes, Murray, and don't look at it no matter what happens.
To me, this looks a bit like the scene at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the best Indiana Jones movie. Now, on the topic of Indiana Jones, I started watching Dial of Destiny the other day and it was so dull I had to switch it off halfway through. What's the deal with these modern movies feeling so cheap and awful? Am I just getting old? So this piece depicts some people at what I assume is the end of their lives, and it's by an artist that's unknown to me sadly, but if any of you guys know then please let us all know. Now we're at a loss as to say exactly what's happening to these poor people. Are they being burned, or are they having their souls sucked from them by some sort of eldritch power? Either way would be painful, and I don't think I fancy trying it myself. Aside from looking like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it also reminds me a little of the scene from Alien Covenant, where David drops the vasers on the population of the Engineer planet and then they all mill about, mutate a little and die. Although from what I remember, they don't really mutate, just turn black and go hard. Can anyone tell me what actually happened to them in that scene? I'd like to know who you think these victims are. At first I thought they were Imperial Guardsmen, but after a closer inspection I think they could be Space Marines. The armour we can see is Space Marine-esque, and I'm sure I can see a book-themed chapter logo on one of the shoulder pads. Who has a book as a chapter logo? Although we said these people might be Space Marines or could be Imperial Guardsmen maybe, there's one other option: slaves. The guy closest to us has what appears to be a slave's collar on. I know this because Mrs. Snakeworks makes me wear one when we go to the shops. Only joking, I wear it all the time. Anyway, it's either that or an interesting metal tie. It's very cyberpunk, and everyone loves cyberpunk because it's good. The only thing I ever heard that was cyberpunk and wasn't very good was Cyberpunk 2077 on release. However, I think it's supposed to be good now. Now, speaking of good, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Clive. If you are enjoying the content on the channel, then please consider joining us on Patreon or becoming a channel member, which is all the rage these days. Again, there's a link to that in the description below and up here somewhere.
We don't do that here.
Now would be a great opportunity to insert that Black Panther clip. Or was it Infinity War? I can't remember. I've not seen those movies for a while. I know we spoke about Marvel movies before, but I've gone off them a lot these days to be honest. I have, however, been rewatching the Lord of the Rings movies, and they are great. So in this piece, we're looking at what I believe to be Imperial Guardsmen by an artist that sadly is again unknown to me. If you know, let us all know. Rogue Trader Imperial Guardsmen are pretty easy to spot. They're usually wearing obvious outfits, apart from when I can't quite make them out, like in the previous piece. Anyway, all guardsmen wore the same sort of outfit back then. A look which was basically the colonial marines from Aliens mixed in with the police flak jackets from the original RoboCop movie. They had wonderful massive square pectoral plates on them. Now, although we said these guys are wearing guardsmen's uniforms, they do seem to be missing one key part of it: their trousers. I swear I can see some naked, uncovered knees there. Maybe it's their beach version of the uniform. Also, I think uncovered knees was considered sexy and a little raunchy back in the day. Or did I dream that? There's what I think is a big bright light in the background, or perhaps an explosion. Maybe it's an explosion in the distance, as I feel these guys would have a more vaporized look to them if they were closer. Unless it's a stun grenade or flash grenade. Does Warhammer 40,000 even have those types of grenade anymore? The guardsman there on the right looks like he's seen enough. He's done with it. He's decided to walk away. Or was it Walk On By? That was a song by Dionne Warwick that I loved as a youngster. Some wonderful artwork there. If you want to see some more art-themed videos, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. And as always, thank you very much for watching.